Hello and welcome to the OT Schoolhouse Podcast, your source for the latest school-based occupational therapy tips, interviews, and research. Now, to get the conversation started, here are your hosts, Jayson and Abby. Class is officially in session.
Hey there, and welcome to episode number 10 of the OT Schoolhouse Podcast. Today we have on a very special guest. Her name is Hopemarie Hower, and she was actually the winner of the OT Schoolhouse Schools Out giveaway a few weeks ago, so we are excited to have her on. Before we get into that real quick, just a few little notes, I guess, before we get started. That is that the show notes from today will be available at otschoolhouse.com/episode 10. So anything that you hear on the podcast today and you want to know more about it, we'll put over there so that you can link over to another website and or potentially find more about that. So we will do that. Another reminder and also a thank you is that we are now offering professional development for some of the episodes of the podcast. This episode will not quite be one of those episodes. We will not be offering professional development for this episode. However, there are 3 other episodes that we are offering professional development. And actually, a few of you took us up on the last 2 weeks and you completed the professional development on the bot versus the M-Fund, which I believe was episode number 6. So thank you for doing that. You can learn more about our professional development opportunities at otschoolhouse.com/PD, as in professional development. You just take a short quiz after listening to the podcast, and we'll send you a certificate of completion. So, like I said earlier, we have Hopemarie Hower on today. She is a school-based OT from Nassau County, Florida. That's in the northern part of Florida. As she said, she's almost in Georgia. But yep, she is in Florida, and she was trying to get me to move out there because it's super cheap. So we'll see, maybe in the future. But she was our Schools Out giveaway winner. And she is an OT of many skills. She has some extensive knowledge in assistive technology and providing assistive technology evaluations and different technologies in the schools. But she is truly a sensory integration person per se. She really digs SI, and she works with kids with sensory integration difficulties both in the classroom as well as in her clinic, which we talk about a little bit, which is on the school premises. So it's not a full-blown outside clinic, but she does have a few things that she can work with, and we'll get into that in a minute. She also talks about a little bit at the end about providing in-services. So if you're into providing in-services and want some ideas, be sure to listen all the way through. With that, I'm just going to say it's my pleasure to introduce to you Hopemarie Hower. She is from like I said, Nassau County, and I can't wait for you all to hear what she has to say in the next 45 minutes or so. All right, here she is. Hey there, Hopemarie. First of all, congrats on being the winner of our OT Schoolhouse Schools Out giveaway. I am stoked to be talking to one of our very own OT Schoolhouse community members.
Hello, Jayson. Thanks. I'm so happy to be here today.
Awesome. I've been waiting for this. We spoke about a week and a half ago or so just to kind of figure out how we're going to do this, and I think it's going to end up being a great little podcast show for everyone out there listening. So let's get started.
Okay.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about who you are and where you're from, and maybe about where you work as an OT?
Well, I'm a school-based occupational therapist in Fernandina Beach, Florida. Fernandina or Nassau County, it's about as far northeast as you can go in the state of Florida. I work in Nassau County schools, and the population that I currently serve is 3rd through 5th grade, as well as high school level students.
Oh, what happened to middle school? That's just not your school?
It isn't. Actually, I've never serviced middle school kiddos, so
wow.
No, not yet anyway.
That's interesting. So one thing that I did think about recently is, are you employed by the district or are you employed by the county?
So I am. I'm a Nassau County School Board employee. So that's my title, I guess. I'm an OT for the Nassau County School Board.
Gotcha. And I know that's interesting just because I feel like all over the country, no one knows how to hire OTs in schools. I mean, some OTs are classified management, some OTs are just classified. Some are even hired as certificated, like a teacher would be. And then even when you go from there outside of the district, of course, you have contracted therapists who work for a third-party agency. And then there's other OTs that kind of work in kind of the realm, it sounds like you do, where you're hired by the entire county, but then you're kind of assigned to a specific district or set of schools.
That is correct.
Gotcha.
That's correct.
So it's interesting how every state does it a little bit different. Every district even just does it a little bit differently. So,
yeah, within our profession, I mean, even within our smaller school-based profession, there's so many variances to that.
Mm-hmm. So how long have you worked with the school or the district that you're at now?
So 6 years. This coming school year will be my 7th year in the district, and I'm really excited about it. We're growing, and we have just a great group of therapists, of occupational therapists and physical therapists and speech language therapists. We have behavioral therapists and vision impaired therapists and hearing impaired therapists.
Wow, a little bit of everything.
We do, and we have great collaboration. It's a really exciting and dynamic district. Perfect.
I'm looking forward to getting into that in a little bit.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, since we're still kind of on the job thing, how's the job market in Florida? I know, a lot of these OT school-based Facebook groups, a lot of people are asking, hey, I'm headed to Florida, or hey, I'm headed to California. Are there jobs down there? And that must be the dogs. No worries. It's fine. Everyone's got to have dogs. No worries. Of course. How's the job market down there in Florida? Do you find that there's plenty of jobs, or is it a little tight?
It seems like we have a good amount of jobs available. I actually haven't looked lately. I do know our own district, we are hiring or have hired an OT and possibly a CODA as well. So that's always nice and helpful, to our growing staff to have that. But I know as far as school-based, we have a larger county right next to Nassau County, which would be Duval Schools. And they're a very big district, and I believe they're also hiring. So the job outlook in Florida for OT seems to be very good.
Awesome.
Specific to the schools.
Yeah. And do you know, at least in California, I know a lot of OTs, if they're looking for a job, we go to edjoin.org. Is there a specific website out there where a lot of people go to look for jobs, or is it just kind of each individual district puts it up on their website, or are you even familiar with that?
And I believe that each district puts it up on their website.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I know Nassau County does, and I know Duval County does. So yes. Okay,
cool. Well, that's good for anyone out there who's looking to move to Nassau County, as YouTube and yourself helped me learn how to pronounce. So
yes, I know. I didn't know that there was a YouTube pronunciation of Nassau County.
Oh, man, that was awesome.
I love it.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I want to ask you one of my favorite questions to ask any OT. And that is, how and when did you decide to be an OT? I mean, all of our stories are different. So I wanted to ask you that one.
Yeah, and that's actually a great question. I love also asking other OTs this question, as well as my intern students, which I have 2 intern students that will be with me this year. One in the fall. That's fantastic. And after Christmas. I love that.
Very cool.
But that's one of my favorite questions too, because I'm just always so curious, how others in our profession decided to become an OT. So in my case, I volunteered as a teen aider or a counselor at a camp called Camp Royale, and that was up in Traverse City, Michigan, which is the Mitten State, and it's lower northern Michigan, and that's where I was born and raised. But basically, Camp Royale was started by Roy and Ellen Brigman, and it was basically a place where children with disabilities could experience the joy of outdoor activities. And it was just really neat. There was no charge to the campers, no pay to the staff. And the camp, I think, was started in 1952. I was looking at that a little bit, and I was kind of wowed by that.
Wow. Is it still going?
Yeah. It is not, but they do have a scholarship program. They kind of stopped doing that. Mr. and Mrs. Brigman have since passed.
Okay.
But what an incredible opportunity. Literally every summer, every camper got to the top of the sand dunes. We have something called the Sleeping Bear Dunes. And even if we push their wheelchairs all the way up. But I would say because of my camp experience, I decided I wanted to study OT. And it's great because right now Camp Royale does have, like I mentioned, a scholarship program for students that are pursuing careers working with special needs children. So I think it's fantastic. And that is what spurred me on to look into OT.
Oh, very cool. So you kind of knew at a younger age then, which is kind of uncommon. I often see OTs not knowing that they want to be an OT until sometimes they already have their bachelor or even down the road as a second career. But you kind of knew a little earlier than that. That's cool.
I did, yeah. I also volunteered at our local hospital up in Traverse City, Michigan, and I was the only student volunteer. Everybody else, they were retirees. We'd have our volunteer meetings, and it was me and everybody else, but I had to work my way. I really wanted to work in the rehab department. I wanted to work with the OTs and the PTs, and they wouldn't let me. They first said I had to work on the floors, delivering water and reading newspaper. So after I put my time in, I kind of think they didn't know what to do with me,
Like we have this young person. What do we do with her?
Why is she here? I think they felt that I was responsible enough, and it might have been the OT and PT department that said, I don't think so, but finally they did, and it was a great experience. It really solidified even more how much I loved the world of OT.
That's awesome. Were you ever on the fence about being a PT or an OT since you were working it kind of in the entire rehab area?
Yeah, not really. I really loved what I saw the OTs doing with the hand therapy. I really enjoyed that, just that fine motor, a lot of the cognitive skill work that they were working on. I really found that fascinating. And I stayed summers. I worked in the emergency room as a clerk up there, and I kind of kept in touch with everyone at the hospital. I actually did one of my first fieldwork assignments at that hospital too. So
oh, wow.
A lot
so
of great memories there. Yeah, it was, and they offered me a job after I graduated, but I didn't go that route. But I really wanted to work with kids. So, anyways, it was interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, last week when we spoke, one of the things that intrigued me most was how you talked about your assistive technology it's not a department, I guess, but the way that you guys collaborate at your schools. So can you share a little bit about the AT team and how it's unique in your district?
Yes, absolutely. And I love AT. So AT, or assistive technology, within our school, and I guess any school, but is basically available to help students both in the gen ed setting as well as the self-contained setting, which we have some of those classrooms as well. And I honestly believe the use of technology is an effective tool to enhance learning for many, many children.
Definitely.
So, and that is kind of our philosophy within our department. So basically, sometimes it can take a while to get an AT referral. So we try and kind of all participate in learning about assistive technology, and from low tech, such as a pencil grip, all the way to, there's apps nowadays, so much assistive technology you can find right on an app on your computer. And so even teachers have been trained as well as staff. So we've pulled various staff, including teachers and therapists, guidance counselors, to go to an AT training that has been done within our district, just to kind of learn a little bit about what assistive technology really is. So with that in mind, if a teacher happens to notice a red flag for a student that may be struggling, learning, or keeping up with classroom assignments, at that point, then I guess the whole team is actually the whole school, including teachers too.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Let myself know, or a guidance counselor know, who would then let me know. And I could go into the classroom and observe. So yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think that students really do experience a greater success when they're allowed to use their abilities, their strengths, to work around their disabilities, which would be their challenges. And I really feel those AT tools combine the best of both of those practices, and we really do embrace that here in Nassau County. So I'm really happy to see. I think that's really important. We didn't have that a few years ago, and you just see a lot more of acceptance with, and And you don't need to be afraid of it. I think sometimes because maybe a teacher or a therapist doesn't really understand what the assistive technology is, let's just not mention it because, and I don't see that happening in our district. It's more of let's embrace it. I understand it. Let's find out what we can do to help this child.
Yeah. And so I find that very awesome that your entire school is like, hey, you know what? We can do this as a team. In a lot of districts, I'm finding that there is no person designated to AT or assistive technology. And when it comes to assistive technology, it's kind of like, well, who does an AT assessment? Is it an occupational therapist? Is it a speech and language pathologist? Is it the school, like, is it the OT that works at that school? Or is there a specific OT that's at the entire district that just does assistive technology? Right. Or is it a contracted out person like, hey, we don't know what to do, so let's find an assistive technology specialist and let them come in and do it. And so it sounds like your district, your county has kind of figured out that, hey, we can do this as long as we work together as a team.
Yes. And I think assistive technology is such an important piece in the educational setting to help the team, the teacher, the therapist, just the school psychologist, the parent, the student themselves, because it's basically any device or piece of equipment or any system that would help bypass or work around or even compensate for a specific learning deficit, which is what we're doing in the schools.
So do you do a separate report then than what would be a occupational therapy assessment for the assistive technology assessment? So at that point, I can, recommend and do assistive technology recommendation, and we can delve deeper. And we do actually have an AT assessment. And so then at that point, that would come into play, and we actually have individuals that would come in and do that. But lots of times we find that, we know enough, we work enough with assistive technology, that piece might not even be completely necessary, that we can on our own kind of own that and help the students with that and incorporate that into our goals as well. Definitely. And in fact, in our district, they often tell us, like, even with assistive technology, there should be a goal somehow in place for that assistive technology. So, for instance, if a kid you shouldn't have a piece of assistive technology such as a pencil grip unless there's some sort of goal related to a pencil grip. And same thing when it comes to more of the augmented communication, you wouldn't put in place a popular system such as Pro Loquo on the iPad without having a goal for that student to be able to use however many different Pro Loquo buttons within the next, year.
Yes, correct. And that's right. Agreed.
Great. There's the puppies. Oh, man. What kind of dogs do you have again?
Sorry. They're all doodle dogs. They're all poodle mix, and I'm sorry. They're usually really quiet, and they got out. I had them in a little separate, I had them sequestered in a different area, and they figured out how to open that door.
Smart dogs.
I do. I have a failed therapy dog who's actually a Cavapoo. He's a King Charles Cavalier and a poodle. And we had him to socialize him, and then we'd send him on out, but he didn't pass that. So, and he's sweet, but he's just very vocal, and they said that was not acceptable. So, but they're basically all non-shedding. We have a rescue. She's a golden doodle, a Pippin, our oldest, and I love it when we head to the vet because they're like Lord of the Rings family. Come on back because it's Pippin, Gimli, and Keely. So, anyway.
I love dogs. We just don't have one yet. Otherwise, you'd probably hear my dogs barking in the background, too.
I know. Like, of all time. Sorry about that.
Just like many other restaurants here in California, this podcast is dog friendly. We'll just keep it at that.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Earlier, you mentioned a conference for assistive technology. And I remember one time there was a conference, and maybe this is the same one that's in Florida, and I really wanted to go to it. But that's just across, that's a $600 plane ticket, if not more. And
right, exactly.
So can you tell us more? What was that conference about, and what all was there?
Yeah, so it's great. AT conferences are fantastic, and it's a great way just to meet other people, collaborate, learn. And have you ever been to an assistive technology conference at all, or are they all this way? I'm not sure.
No, I don't know. The only thing that I've been closest to an assistive technology conference, Oh man, I'm drawing a blank, but it's it's the abilities. I think it's abilities conference.
Okay.
And it's just this giant open floor where they have habilitations. Is that the name of it? I can't remember, but basically it's just a bunch of adapted equipment. And so like they have everything from pencil grips, people who sell pencil grips are there, all the way up to like these huge F-350 Ford trucks that are modified so that someone with a wheelchair can get it up into a lifted wheel or up into a lifted truck. Like it has an elevator built into the truck. And so, but I haven't been to a assistive technology specific one. So.
Okay. Yeah. So those are great. And I think also what that helps do is have us bring back to our district just, that educational piece for teachers and fellow staff mates who might not understand it and might not be, because they don't understand it, as willing to reach out and say, hey, this child I have is struggling a little bit in math. Is there something we can do, I can learn, you can help me learn in the classroom about, assistive technology. Yeah. Just because it can increase a child's self-reliance and sense of independence. And I think that's the way we need to look at it. So at these conferences, and I've said this is what I basically kind of will say, kids who struggle in school are they're oftentimes like overly dependent on their parents, two siblings, friends and teachers, just for any kind of help, even with assignments. And really by utilizing AT, kids can experience success working independently. And that's the biggest thing I think I take away from these conferences. And you can, like you said, it can be anything from just a pencil grasp or a button to help kids participate. We can pre-record a voice and have them push the button, and they get all excited about that.
They do. The jelly bean buttons. They love them.
Yeah, I love them too. They're fantastic. I love recording and playing with them, but the kids have so much fun, and it kind of takes me back to those Camp Royale days where, we weren't using assistive technology, at camp. We were out in cabins and stuff, but it brings kids together. For example, kids that do use those buttons. And it's just this sense of kind of fun and camaraderie. And it's a piece and a way for them to participate and, allows them to express what they want. Yes, this, no, that. So I love that. I really do like assistive technology. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that assistive technology, I mean, we could have a whole...
Yes.
We could talk about that for days.
I agree.
But one of the things that we talked about a little bit on our pre-recording call was sensory integration, sensory strategies, and stuff like that. So to what extent do you provide sensory strategies or sensory integration techniques with the students you serve?
Yeah. And I kind of love sensory integration. I think, if I may just speak a little bit about, just our world, just everything seems ramped up. Everything's so much faster. We can access so much via the internet. And so kids are, expected to do more and more, faster. That's just, and adults as well. So I just feel like, sensory integration is just simply our body's ability, to take in information from our senses, process that information, and then respond. And I think sometimes with the way that our world is moving so fast, as we go from talking about AT, assistive technology, which is technology now, to sensory, there's a way that we can kind of combine the two and, yes, keep that assistive technology and all the new modern technology, but also keep in mind how our bodies are responding to all this technology as well. So I think that just basically sensory being the organization of our senses for our use, or sensations for our use. And in school, I just see a lot of so sensory processing disorder is a sensory integration dysfunction. And this is how I would explain it to a teacher. So I'll go in and speak to a class or a teacher, and after observing, and all of this can cause social difficulties, emotional difficulties, through increased anxiety, motor impairments, which can then result in functional deficits. So if I look around the classroom and I tell the teacher, think about our 7 senses, which is, vision, tactile, the olfactory, auditory, gustatory, vestibular, proprioception.
All of them,
And
yep.
I'll have them ask, well, what is proprioception? And I'm just, basically, it's just our body's position in space. Vestibular is our balance. And I tell them simple is better. So they have great, start of the school year, all these great decorations on the walls and themes. And it's fantastic. But sometimes simple is better. Take some things down. Sometimes that's overstimulating for students. In fact, many times it is.
Oh, yeah.
And so in my own OT room, I try and keep it as plain as possible. I think it's kind of that same thing where you go into a store and when there's too much to select from, you're just overwhelmed. When 1 or 2 choices would be better.
Definitely.
So I always kind of preach as far as sensory integration or SI techniques, just simple is better. Just follow that rule. Remember the senses. And then, seating is important. Some kiddos need preferential seating just because they might be a little bit more distracted. I put TheraBand on the chair legs if they need, or a little Velcro under the tabletop.
Yeah.
Things like that. Sometimes we'll pull in a mini trampoline and have it off to the side. And the kids know, they can just do that. Once in a while, some kiddos will come down to my room and just, they'll bring a little note. They don't even need to say anything. They'll do a little bit of jumping on the trampoline or swing, and they'll head back to class.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and it works really well. So just kind of taking a break, grounding that sensory system a little bit, and then progressing from there.
All right. So you just mentioned you have your own room, and you're probably making a lot of OTs that work in schools kind of jealous out there right now, especially me. So I just want to know, what does your room look like? Does it look like a sensory clinic type of thing, or is it more of like a classroom, or what does your room look like?
Yeah, it doesn't look like a classroom. So I have I have sensory swings. And my favorite is the bolster swing. I love the bolster swing. I have kids hang upside down like a sloth, I call it. And I love all that input that's happening, through the arms and the legs, and they're hanging, and I'll time them. And they think that's great fun, but it's also grounding their system a little bit. And then I have a bean table in there where we do our fine motor work. We have walls, or we do, open spaces where they can do wall push-ups. I have a bike in there, and we have cones, and we can go out. There's an area where they can ride the bike and go through the cones, set up their own obstacle course. Nice. Yeah. Here in Florida, it's really nice, as it must be in California. We have outdoor corridors, so the kids can ride. We have exercisers, I call them. And I don't know if you have those. They're kind of just a 3-wheeled. They're kind of run by just the movement of their trunk going back and forth.
No, I don't have that. What's it called?
An exerciser. They're great.
I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, they're fantastic. So we just kind of do a lot of that. So it is quite a large room. We have a computer set up in there too. And then I also we have a Neo in our room, which is basically just a word processor. Yes. That they can use too. And the kids they have Chromebooks for use in the classroom. So lots of times we'll use a Chromebook.
Do you use do you use Google Docs a lot then?
Yes, we do.
How about the speech to text?
Yes, I use that quite a bit, actually. I was going to talk about that too. Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's another example of assistive technology. So, yeah, I love that. That's a fantastic piece for kids, especially if, they're having trouble with handwriting. They can get on that speech to text. And for some kids, it doesn't work. They speak too rapidly. I tend to speak too rapidly. So we kind of laugh and we talk about how they need to slow down a little bit. But once they get the hang of it, it works quite well. And it really allows them to have that independence.
Yeah. So I've also found that the speech to text feature in Google Docs does pretty well at learning a person's voice.
Yes.
I was presenting in a classroom using, like the teacher computer. I was teaching the kids how to use it. And so I was, of course, showing them. And then I actually had another kid come up who, of course, is much younger, has a much higher pitched voice. And the computer wouldn't listen to them no matter how loud they were and dictated they were right in front of the microphone. It wouldn't pick up their voice. But then, I was standing back because the student was right in front of the computer, and I would speak softly and it would pick up my voice. Like it really does a good job at understanding voices. And so I can imagine in a classroom, that's good. Once the computer learns that student's voice, it's going to kind of tune out to the other 28 kids in the classroom.
It does. And each kiddo kind of has a Chromebook they're assigned to. So I'll have them bring their Chromebook. But I mean, that's a perfect example. We've worked on that too. Maybe pushing your chair back a little bit, or let's lean in a little bit, and so that's part of working out those details. But yeah, that's a really great, and that's another great example of assistive technology. Mm-hmm. Like a student who has difficulty writing can compose a whole school report by dictating that speech to text on Google Chrome.
And some of these kids can really talk, but cannot get a single word on paper. So
yes. And that's where I tell teachers, this is a fantastic tool to use. And it, it helps the child have success, and, it's great for you. And fantastic.
And let's be honest, they're all using Siri on their mom's iPhone anyways. So
yeah, they are. I know. It's so true.
Yeah. So
it's so true.
Some things, while it is still assistive technology, some things are a little less assistive technology than they were, 5-10 years ago. Things are just becoming more modern and
I know, easier.
Everyone's using them. So why not use it?
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. So you mentioned a little bit of your room, and I want to give a shout out to one of our listeners. Her name's actually Stephanie, and she's from Michigan, where you're originally from.
Oh, yeah, the Mitten State.
Yeah. So she wanted to know how you create buy-in from teachers when it comes to sensory strategies. So you mentioned, sometimes giving the student, some the band around the chair or the Velcro under the desk. So how are you getting your teachers to help you out with these things?
Yeah. So, part of it is I've done in-services too, to explain, again, what the sensory system is, how it affects all of us, how it affects life in the academic world, within our own school setting, and then within the classroom. And so I will go in and talk about maybe keeping the walls, like I'd mentioned, just less is better, simpler is better, really. And then, again, that understanding of what is the sensory system and what it does, how it's the organization of sensation for use, basically. Mm-hmm. And so then we'll talk about issues that they might see in their classroom that might be causing a little disruption in the classroom, or a child, is fidgety or not paying attention or falling out of their chair, Mm-hmm. And so we talk about those things and how they might help, and I've provided TheraBand, and sometimes teachers say, well, it's distracting,
Mm-hmm.
Now other kids want
it.
It becomes a toy. That's
Mm-hmm.
right. And so, and then I'll go in and talk to the whole class about how, this is what it's for. It's just part of this chair here. It's not to be a toy, and then once the kids kind of understand what it is, they think it's pretty neat. And mm-hmm. so I think just making my presence known by going to the classroom and reaching out to the teachers saying, hey, is there anything I can help with? If you have wiggly students or kiddos that might have difficulty staying on task, let me come in, let me talk to you, let's see what we can do. And that's basically what I do. So I guess just building those relationships is really important. And I know every school year, there's it's almost like starting a new job every school year.
Of course, because there's always a lot of staff turnover, and you got to meet the new teachers. You got to, if there's a new administrator, you got to get to know them, because what we do has it takes rapport. A teacher is not going to listen to you or not even be open to your ideas unless they really see you as being valuable. And right. One of the ways that I try to build rapport fairly quickly is trying to give them those simple things that you can see a big difference in, and right. such as like the therapy band. That's one thing that a lot of teachers kind of see really quickly.
Correct.
Another one that I like to go to right away to help teachers with something very simple is for those kids that can't touch the ground when they're sitting in their chair. And I just say, hey, see that Amazon box you have over there from whatever you ordered over the summer?
Yes.
Try just putting that under their feet and see if it helps them stay in their seat. And so it's something that's simple. It's not like we're going out and purchasing a $200 item or anything like that. It's just they already have it in their classroom. All we're doing is just simply modifying the current environment.
Yes,
And
that's exactly right. Yeah. I guess just, like building that rapport, just letting them know I'm here and these are things that I could help with if you need it. And then I check back in too, some teachers will reach out, they'll send me a little email, and I know others I'll just kind of pop in and just, see how it's going and if there's anything I can do. But I know that's hard to do too if you're going to many, many different schools and you have a huge caseload. So
in fact,
that isn't always feasible.
Yeah, Stephanie mentioned that she has several, like 8 schools, if I remember right. And that's just hard because, like, how do you get to know everyone? Like, every time you go, you're trying to introduce yourself to the secretary and the other teachers. I mean, it's a lot of people.
Yes.
So
it's so true. And that's hard too.
Yeah.
So sometimes even just communication through, an email. If I send out kind of a blast to I'll just say my teachers, the teachers that I service and at their students, and then they'll reach out, they'll reach back to me. Hey, you mentioned something. I have this student, those types of things. So
yeah. Perfect. I'd want to ask you one more question as far as sensory.
Yes.
Do you try to, when you pull a kid out or when a kid comes to your office and you have some sensory tools, how do you mix sensory strategies or sensory integration strategies with educational strategies?
Yeah. So I always say, in the schools, we're just because it's the educational setting, it has to be educationally relevant. So I always try and incorporate that into, for example, if I really want Johnny to spend at least 10 minutes, doing a really nice piece of fine motor writing work for me, we really want to focus on that. He may need to have some sensory in order to kind of ground his sensory system a little bit and get him ready to write. I never have kids come into the OT room or my room, just boom, come in and, sit down. I never have them just sit down ever.
Right.
We always start with some sensory motor, gross motor work, always. And I kind of ask them too, it's that whole, how is your engine running? We kind of feed off of that a little bit, but basically, you can sense when a child comes into your room, how they're doing. Sometimes they're, you can just tell they're tired. Maybe they don't feel good. They haven't slept well, or they're really excited about something. So I kind of take all those in, just kind of assess that child real quick. And based on that, do that sensory motor piece, whatever they might need, wherever their energy level is, in order for them to do that academic goal task that you really want them to perform to the best of their ability. So again, before I have them sit down at my bean table, or, not just there, maybe it's on the mat, side sitting, working on a puzzle or something. Before I have them quietly do anything, I have them first do a sensory motor or gross motor piece.
Good. That's a good way to, like you said, get their body right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So,
yes.
All right. Jumping back real quick, you mentioned in-services. How do you do an in-service every year, 2 in-services, or how do you come up with your in-services?
So this past school year, I started out the year. We had our kind of opening, start to the school year, OT, PT meeting, and I did an in-service on therapeutic yoga. So, and it was great. And I did that first to my fellow OTs and PTs. And then I took that back to my school and did an in-service there, which is really great. And there is a sensory integrative piece that actually works really well in the academic setting. And it works really great right before testing. Like when we have our big district-wide testing, I'll go in, and it's really great for the teachers and the students because we can do a little bit of this therapeutic kind of sensory integrative work through yoga. And the kids find it very relaxing, and they kind of get to expect it, and they know, it's very calming. So anyways, back to the in-service piece. It's basically, we bring back anything that we've done in any kind of continuing education, and then we can bring it back to everybody else and share it.
Perfect.
Which is really nice.
That's cool. So then did you recently go to a therapeutic yoga training of some sort? Last
summer, I participated in one. So it was last school year. We start, we start in 2 weeks and 2 days.
I know, right? It's coming up soon.
It just means summer's almost over.
Yep. Yep.
But so it was last summer that I did that, and that was fantastic.
Very
I really
cool.
enjoyed it.
Awesome. So after you do your in-services, then how do you, again, going back to that, how do you get buy-in? What do you do after you've done that in-service to get a teacher to carry that over, to get that yoga in the classroom? Or do you kind of just let it go and let teachers come to you if they want more help?
So I also do a PowerPoint presentation, which I can then distribute. And then they can, they look at it, they love it, or they'll come back and I have a question on this. So usually then I'll meet and I'll talk as a group, any questions, let's go through it. And that's usually how that will work. And I try not to make it work. I try and make it fun.
Yeah.
So not super long, and just, hitting those main points that I think would be most relevant in the classroom.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. So that seems to work the best. Yeah. So they don't think, oh, okay, I've got one more thing on my schedule.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, my wife's a fourth grade teacher. And so yes. I often ask her, do you think a teacher would be open to this before I do anything? Because they just have so much work on their plates.
They do. And that's the thing. I mean, they do. They're everything from nurse to, counselor, yep. all within their classroom environment. It's like home for the student that day. And that's where everything happens. So
yeah,
yes.
No joke.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, we should probably get ready to wrap it up, but I do have one last question.
Yes.
Recently, we've had a lot of people reaching out to me, emailing us on the website at otschoolhouse.com. And it seems like there's been an influx of new graduates. Of course, this is kind of summer. Some of the new grads are graduating, as well as other therapists who just happen to be transitioning, maybe from the hospital or a senior nursing facility. And so what's one piece of advice that you would give to all those OTs, either new or just transitioning, looking to get into schools? What's one piece of advice you would give to them?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think actually talk with school-based OTs and actually listen to great programs such as the OT Schoolhouse. And I mean that. I mean, that's fantastic because it is such great information. All of your podcasts are fantastic. And
thank you.
You're welcome. I mean that. And so many other great programs out there. I think if they just do a little research and seek out those opportunities, that would really help solidify in their own mind if this is really what they want to do and how to get started doing that. So
great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate having you on. It's been great talking to you.
You too, Jayson. Thank you.
And I wish you the best coming up. I know it sounds like you said 2 weeks, 2 days.
2 weeks, 2 days.
I think I might have,
yes.
I think I'm pretty similar. I think I go back August 6th. So however many days away that is, it's coming up here soon.
Yeah, we go back the 2nd. So yeah.
Yep. And I'm sure everyone else out there listening is getting ready to go back as well. So thank you again for coming on, and thank you for participating in our giveaway.
Yes.
I'm so excited that you were able to come on. I think you had so much to say, from in-services to sensory to the assistive technology piece. That was fantastic. So I look forward to keeping in touch with you and seeing where all this leads for you, and keeping you up to date on what we're doing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Jayson. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Would you like to leave maybe an email or something if anyone has any specific questions for you?
Yes, and we're actually switching over our whole, as our county is growing, we're kind of switching that over. So I can actually leave, I'll just leave my personal email on here. And it's basically just Hopemariehower at yahoo.com. If anybody has questions, I always love to hear from fellow OTs. So, or anybody, teachers that might have questions. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
All righty. Well, thank you so much again for coming on, and we'll keep in touch.
Great. Thank you so much, Jayson. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right. Well, that was Hopemarie from Florida. She was the winner of our Schools Out giveaway, and we are so happy she was able to come on. I want to again say thank you to her for taking the time out of her day and coming on to help us learn a little bit about sensory integration and assistive technology. That was fantastic. So one quick correction: after we hung up the phone, we realized that we had accidentally called the Exercaucer The Exersaucer is actually known as the Exerbug scooter, and if you would like to learn any more about that little scooter that is looks pretty fun to me, I've never used it, but it looks fun. Or if you'd like to hear anything else or see anything else that we talked about in this podcast, be sure to visit otschoolhouse.com/episode 10. That's episode and then just the numbers 1 and 0. And you will be able to see all the show notes from today's episode and learn more about myself as well as Hopemarie. So we'll see you over there. If not, we'll see you next time on the podcast. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the OT Schoolhouse podcast. For more ways to help you and your students succeed right now, head on over to otschoolhouse.com. Until next time, class is dismissed.